Jenny loved her morning routine. Every day at 7 sharp, she would step out onto her front porch with a steaming cup of coffee, breathe in the fresh air, and admire her beautiful garden. It had taken her almost 4 years to get everything just right. The roses were blooming perfectly, the grass was green and thick, and her neighbors always complimented her on how amazing everything looked. She had moved to Sunset Hills 3 years ago after her divorce, looking for a fresh start. The neighborhood seemed perfect back then. Nice houses, friendly people, and reasonable HOA rules that kept everything looking neat. Jenny had poured her heart into making her little corner of the world beautiful. Gardening became her therapy, her way of healing and moving forward. But this Tuesday morning felt different. Something was off. Jenny stepped outside and immediately noticed her garden hose lying across her neighbor's driveway like a green snake. That was weird. She always coiled it up neatly after watering her plants. Maybe the wind had blown it around. She walked over to retrieve it, but as she picked it up, she noticed it was still slightly wet. The metal nozzle felt cool to the touch. Had she forgotten to turn off the water the night before? Jenny prided herself on being careful about these things. Water was expensive, and she had been trying to keep her bills low since living on a single income wasn't easy. Speaking of water bills, Jenny remembered the shock she had gotten just last week. Her monthly water bill had jumped from around $60 to over $120. She had called the water company twice, thinking there might be a mistake or a leak somewhere. The customer service representative had been polite but firm. The meter readings were accurate. Someone was definitely using more water at her address. Jenny walked around her property, checking for leaks. She examined every faucet, every sprinkler head, every connection she could find. Nothing seemed broken or dripping. The mystery was driving her crazy. Over the next few days, Jenny started paying closer attention to her surroundings. She began waking up a little earlier, around 6:30, just to see if she could figure out what was going on. Her bedroom window faced the front yard, so she had a clear view of her garden area. On Thursday morning, she got her answer. Through her bedroom curtains, Jenny watched in disbelief as Linda Peterson, her next-door neighbor and the president of their HOA, casually walked across the property line and began unwinding Jenny's garden hose. Linda moved with the confidence of someone who had done this many times before. She dragged the hose over to her own yard and began watering her struggling flower beds. Jenny couldn't believe what she was seeing. Linda Peterson was stealing her water. Linda lived in the big corner house with the fancy SUV parked out front. She was always dressed perfectly, always had something to say about neighborhood standards, and always acted like she owned the entire street. Jenny had tried to be friendly when she first moved in, but Linda had a way of making every conversation feel like a lecture about proper lawn care or the importance of following HOA guidelines. Now, it all made sense. Linda's own yard had always looked a bit rough around the edges. Her grass was patchy, her flower beds were sparse, and despite all her talk about neighborhood standards, her own property never quite measured up to her big speeches at HOA meetings. Jenny watched as Linda methodically watered her entire front yard using Jenny's hose and Jenny's water. The whole process took about 20 minutes. When Linda was finished, she coiled up the hose somewhat carelessly and left it in Jenny's driveway instead of putting it back where she found it. The audacity was breathtaking. Jenny waited a few minutes after Linda went back inside. Then she got dressed and went outside to investigate. She checked the water spigot and found it was still dripping slightly. Linda hadn't bothered to turn it off completely. Jenny tightened it and examined the area around the hose connection. There were muddy footprints that definitely weren't hers, and the ground around the faucet was much wetter than it should have been. This explained everything: the high water bill, the mysteriously moved hose, even why her own flower beds had seemed a little thirsty lately despite her regular watering schedule. Linda had been helping herself to Jenny's water supply for who knows how long. Jenny spent the rest of the day feeling angry and confused. She had always tried to be a good neighbor. She kept her property neat. She followed all the HOA rules, and she never bothered anyone. The idea that someone would just take her water without asking felt like such a violation. The next morning, Jenny decided to confirm her suspicions. She set her alarm for 6:15 and positioned herself at her bedroom window with a clear view of the front yard. Sure enough, at exactly 6:30, Linda appeared again. This time, Jenny watched the entire process from start to finish. Linda didn't just use a little water. She filled up a large watering can multiple times, soaked her entire front flower bed, and even washed off her porch steps. The whole routine took almost 30 minutes. When she was done, Linda looked around quickly to make sure no one was watching, then hurried back to her own house. Jenny felt her cheeks burning with anger. This wasn't just borrowing, this was outright theft, and Linda was being sneaky about it, which meant she knew exactly what she was doing wrong. That afternoon, Jenny decided to confront the situation directly. She walked over to Linda's house and knocked on the front door. Linda answered wearing a pristine white blouse and perfectly applied makeup, as if she had been expecting company. "Hi, Linda," Jenny said, trying to keep her voice calm and friendly. "I wanted to talk to you about something. I've been having some trouble with my water bill lately, and I noticed someone has been using my garden hose early in the mornings." Linda's expression didn't change at all. She looked Jenny straight in the eye and said, "Oh, really? That's strange. Maybe you have a leak somewhere." The casual lie was almost more shocking than the original theft. Linda wasn't even embarrassed or apologetic. She was pretending it never happened. "Actually," Jenny continued, "I saw you using my hose this morning to water your plants." Linda's demeanor shifted slightly. Her smile became tighter, more forced. "Well, Jenny, as HOA president, I have a responsibility to make sure all the properties in our neighborhood maintain certain standards. Sometimes that means taking initiative when resources need to be shared efficiently." Jenny blinked hard. "Shared efficiently? Linda, that's my water. You're running up my water bill without even asking. The HOA guidelines clearly state that all residents should contribute to maintaining the overall appearance of the neighborhood." Linda replied smoothly, "I'm simply ensuring that both of our properties look their best. It benefits everyone's property values." Jenny realized that Linda was completely twisting the situation. Somehow, in Linda's mind, stealing water had become a community service. The conversation was going nowhere, and Linda clearly had no intention of stopping or apologizing. "Linda, I need you to stop using my water without permission," Jenny said firmly. "If you need help with your yard, we can talk about other solutions, but you can't just take my utilities." Linda's fake smile disappeared entirely. "I think you're being very selfish, Jenny. A good neighbor would understand that we all need to work together. Maybe you should review the HOA handbook and think about what it really means to be part of this community." With that, Linda closed the door, leaving Jenny standing on the porch feeling frustrated and dismissed. It was clear that talking wasn't going to solve this problem. Linda felt entitled to take whatever she wanted, and she was going to keep doing it until someone made her stop. Walking back to her own house, Jenny realized this was just the beginning of what was going to be a much bigger problem. Jenny thought her conversation with Linda would be the end of it. She was wrong. Dead wrong. The very next morning, Linda was back at 6:30 sharp, using Jenny's hose like nothing had happened. This time, she wasn't even trying to be sneaky about it. She dragged the hose across the yard with loud scraping sounds, turned the water on full blast, and spent 45 minutes watering everything in sight. Jenny watched from her window, feeling her blood pressure rise with each passing minute. Linda watered her flower beds, her walkway, her driveway, and even sprayed down her mailbox. When she was finished, she didn't even bother coiling up the hose properly. She just dropped it in a messy pile and walked away. This was no longer borrowing. This was Linda making a statement. She was showing Jenny exactly who she thought was in charge. Things got worse over the following week. Linda started bringing friends over to help with her yard work, and they all used Jenny's water like it was their personal supply. Jenny watched in amazement as 3 women showed up with buckets, watering cans, and even a small pressure washer. They spent 2 hours cleaning Linda's entire patio area and washing her outdoor furniture. Jenny's water bill was going to be astronomical. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning. Jenny was enjoying a quiet cup of coffee on her back porch when she heard voices coming from her side yard. She walked around the corner and found Linda with 2 other neighborhood women, both holding Jenny's garden hose. "Oh, hi, Jenny," Linda said with fake sweetness. "We're just finishing up some community beautification work. Mrs. Rodriguez here has been struggling with her garden, so we thought we'd help her get everything watered properly." Mrs. Rodriguez looked embarrassed and tried to hand the hose back to Jenny. "I told Linda we should ask first, but she said you wouldn't mind." "Actually, I do mind," Jenny said, taking the hose. "This is my property and my water bill. You can't just invite people over to use my utilities." Linda stepped forward with that same fake smile she always used. "Jenny, I think you're misunderstanding the spirit of community living. The HOA handbook clearly states that we should all work together to maintain property values. When one yard looks bad, it affects everyone." "Then buy your own hose," Jenny replied, "and pay for your own water." Linda's smile finally cracked. "There's no need to be hostile. I'm trying to help the neighborhood and you're being difficult. Maybe you should consider whether you're really a good fit for this community." The threat was clear. Linda was the HOA president, and she was letting Jenny know that she had power to make life difficult for anyone who didn't cooperate with her demands. Jenny decided to try a different approach. Maybe if she made it impossible for Linda to access the water, the problem would solve itself. That weekend, she went to the hardware store and bought a locking hose reel. It was expensive, but it seemed like a reasonable solution. She installed it on Sunday afternoon, making sure everything was secure. The hose was completely enclosed in a metal housing, and the lock was solid. Linda would need bolt cutters to get through it. Monday morning came, and Jenny felt confident as she made her coffee. She positioned herself at the window and waited. Right on schedule, Linda appeared at 6:30. She walked straight to the new hose reel and examined it for about 30 seconds. Then Linda pulled out her phone. Jenny watched in disbelief as Linda made a call, spoke quietly for a few minutes, then sat down on Jenny's porch steps to wait. 20 minutes later, a pickup truck pulled up, and a man in work clothes got out carrying a toolbox. Linda had called a handyman to break into Jenny's locked hose reel. The man looked uncomfortable as Linda explained what she wanted him to do. Jenny could see him shaking his head and pointing at the lock. Linda pulled out her wallet and started counting out cash. After a few more minutes of discussion, the handyman reluctantly began working on the lock. Jenny threw on her robe and ran outside. "Excuse me, what are you doing?" The handyman looked up, clearly relieved to see her. "Ma'am, this lady says you asked her to get this lock open for you, but I was starting to think that didn't sound right." "That's absolutely not true," Jenny said. "This is my property and she's trying to break into my equipment." Linda stepped forward, waving a piece of paper. "Actually, as HOA president, I have the authority to ensure that all community resources are being used appropriately. This is an official HOA inspection." Jenny grabbed the paper and read it quickly. It was just a blank HOA form that Linda had filled out herself, claiming that Jenny's hoarding of water resources was a violation of community standards. "This is ridiculous," Jenny told the handyman. "She's been stealing my water for weeks, and now she's trying to break my lock so she can keep doing it." The handyman packed up his tools immediately. "I'm not getting involved in neighbor disputes, ma'am. You need to work this out between yourselves." He got back in his truck and drove away, leaving Linda standing there with her fake paperwork. Linda's mask finally came off completely. "You're making a big mistake, Jenny. I have a lot of influence in this neighborhood and I can make your life very difficult. Do you really want to go to war with the HOA? You already started the war when you began stealing from me," Jenny replied. "And breaking into my property is illegal, no matter what fake forms you wave around." Linda stormed off, but Jenny knew this wasn't over. Linda was the type of person who had to win every conflict, and she had just been publicly embarrassed in front of a witness. Jenny was right to be worried. Over the next few days, Linda launched a campaign of petty harassment that was impressive in its creativity and exhausting in its persistence. First came the HOA violation notices. Jenny found them taped to her door almost daily. Her grass was supposedly too long. Her flower beds were allegedly the wrong color scheme. Her mailbox needed repainting. Her trash cans were positioned incorrectly. Each notice threatened fines and legal action if the violations weren't corrected immediately. Jenny knew these were all made up. Her property was immaculate, and several neighbors had complimented her on how nice everything looked. But Linda was using her position as HOA president to create official-looking documents that would be hard to fight. Then Linda got other people involved. She started a whisper campaign about Jenny being uncooperative and selfish. She told people that Jenny was hoarding resources and refusing to contribute to community improvement efforts. Some neighbors started giving Jenny cold looks when she walked by. The worst part was when Linda figured out how to get around the locked hose reel. Jenny woke up one Thursday morning to find her back gate standing wide open. She rushed outside and found Linda in her backyard, connected to the spigot near her kitchen door. "How did you get back here?" Jenny demanded. Linda looked up casually from watering her plants. "The gate was unlocked. I assumed you left it open for community use since you've been so difficult about sharing resources from the front yard." Jenny knew she had locked that gate. Linda had either picked the lock or climbed over the fence. Either way, she was now trespassing on private property and had trampled through Jenny's prized vegetable garden to reach the back spigot. "Get out of my backyard right now," Jenny said, her voice shaking with anger. "There's no need to be dramatic," Linda replied. "I'm almost finished." The HOA guidelines clearly state that all residents have a responsibility to maintain their properties, and sometimes that requires creative solutions. Jenny realized that Linda was never going to stop. She would keep escalating, keep finding new ways to take what she wanted, and keep using her HOA position to justify increasingly outrageous behavior. As Jenny watched Linda finish watering her plants with stolen water in Jenny's own backyard, she knew that being reasonable and polite wasn't going to solve this problem. Linda only understood power and consequences. It was time for Jenny to get creative too. Jenny spent the entire weekend thinking about her situation. Linda wasn't going to stop. If anything, she was getting bolder and more aggressive. The fake HOA violations were piling up, her water bill was through the roof, and now Linda was literally breaking into her backyard to steal water. Something had to be done, but Jenny wasn't sure what. She couldn't call the police over a garden hose, could she? Would they even take it seriously? And Linda had so much influence in the neighborhood that Jenny worried about making things even worse. On Sunday evening, Jenny decided to do some research. She spent hours online looking up property rights, HOA rules, and neighbor disputes. Most of the advice was pretty standard. Talk to them directly, document everything, contact local authorities if necessary. But none of it seemed to apply to her situation with Linda. Then Jenny stumbled across some forum discussions about creative solutions to neighbor problems. People shared stories about dealing with everything from loud music to trespassing pets. Some of the ideas were pretty wild, but they gave Jenny hope that there might be other ways to handle her situation. One story in particular caught her attention. A woman in Texas had dealt with neighbors who kept using her electrical outlet to charge their car. She had installed a timer switch that would cut the power at random intervals. The neighbors eventually gave up and bought their own extension cord. That got Jenny thinking. What if she could make Linda's water theft backfire somehow? What if instead of trying to keep Linda away from the water, she could make Linda not want to use it? Jenny kept reading and found more stories. Someone had dealt with package thieves by filling fake packages with cat litter. Another person had stopped people from walking through their yard by installing motion-activated sprinklers. The key seemed to be making the unwanted behavior have unpleasant consequences. Monday morning, Jenny called in sick to work. She needed time to think and plan without worrying about her job. She made a strong cup of coffee and sat down with a notebook to brainstorm ideas. Her first thought was to add something harmless but unpleasant to the water. Food coloring that would stain Linda's plants, soap that would make everything slippery. But Jenny quickly realized that anything she added to the water could damage her own plumbing or garden if it backfired. Then she remembered a conversation she'd had with her brother-in-law Tony at Christmas dinner. Tony worked for the city's water department, and he had told some interesting stories about his work. One thing that stuck in Jenny's mind was how he had described the different types of water systems that buildings used. Jenny picked up her phone and called Tony. It had been a few months since they'd talked, but Tony was always happy to chat about his work. "Hey Tony, it's Jenny. I hope you don't mind me calling, but I have a weird question about plumbing. Sure, what's going on? Tony sounded curious. Jenny explained her situation with Linda, being careful not to reveal what she was planning. She just said she was having problems with someone using her outdoor water without permission and wondered about her options. Tony listened patiently, then laughed. Wow, that's pretty bold of your neighbor. You know, you have every right to control what comes out of your own spigots. It's your property, your water, your rules. What do you mean exactly? Jenny asked. Well, think about it this way. Some people have well water, some have city water, some have recycled water for irrigation. As long as you're not violating any health codes or local ordinances, you can pretty much hook up whatever you want to your own outdoor plumbing. Tony went on to explain how some businesses used non-potable water for landscaping to save money. There are companies that provide gray water, recycled water, even treated wastewater for irrigation. It's perfectly legal as long as it's clearly marked and not used for drinking. Jenny felt a light bulb going off in her head. So if someone connected their garden hose to, let's say, a tank of non-drinking water, that would be okay? Absolutely, as long as it's on their own property and properly labeled. Some people collect rainwater, some use pool water for their gardens when they're draining them. The key is making sure anyone who might use it knows what they're dealing with. After talking to Tony for another 20 minutes about various water systems, Jenny had the beginnings of a plan. It was crazy, but it might just work. The next day, Jenny took a long lunch break and drove to the industrial part of town. She had done some online research and found a company that serviced portable toilets and septic systems. Their website mentioned that they also handled waste removal for construction sites and special events. Jenny felt nervous as she walked into the office, but the receptionist was friendly and helpful. I need to ask about renting a small waste storage tank, Jenny said, trying to sound casual. My brother-in-law works for the city, and he mentioned you might have something that could work for a, plumbing project. The woman behind the counter nodded knowingly. We get requests like that sometimes. People doing their own septic repairs or testing plumbing systems. We have some small portable tanks that work well for temporary storage. They're clean and food grade when they're delivered, but most people use them for gray water or wastewater. Jenny learned that she could rent a 50-gallon tank for a reasonable weekly fee. It would be delivered clean, and she could fill it with whatever she wanted. When she was done with her project, they would pick it up and dispose of the contents properly. Just to be clear, the woman said, you'd be responsible for filling it yourself, and you need to make sure anything you're doing is legal on your property. We just provide the tank. Jenny signed the rental agreement and scheduled delivery for the following Saturday. She was really doing this. The rest of the week, Jenny worked on the details of her plan. She researched local laws about water systems and property rights. She found out that as long as she posted clear warning signs and didn't violate any health codes, she could connect her outdoor spigot to any water source she wanted on her own property. She also spent time documenting Linda's continued theft. Every morning, Jenny took photos of Linda using her hose, noting the time and duration. She wanted to have evidence of the ongoing problem in case anyone questioned her actions later. On Friday afternoon, Jenny went to the hardware store and bought supplies. She needed valve connectors that would let her switch between her regular water supply and her special tank. She also bought several bright yellow warning signs that said, "Caution, non-potable water," and "Property owner, use only." The hardware store employee was helpful in explaining how to set up a dual water system. A lot of people do this for pool filling or garden irrigation, he said. Just make sure you label everything clearly so nobody gets confused about what they're using. Jenny also bought a locking valve cover that would hide her switching mechanism. She didn't want Linda to figure out what was happening too quickly. Saturday morning, the tank was delivered right on schedule. The driver helped Jenny position it behind her garden shed where it wouldn't be visible from the street. It was smaller than she had expected, but it would definitely hold enough liquid to make her point. "What are you planning to fill it with?" the driver asked casually. Jenny had prepared for this question. "Just some gray water for garden testing. I'm trying to set up a water conservation system." The driver nodded and handed her some paperwork. "Just remember to call us when you're ready for pickup. and make sure you follow all local guidelines for whatever you're doing." As Jenny signed the delivery receipt, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Her plan was really taking shape. Linda had no idea what was coming, but she was about to learn a very important lesson about respecting other people's property. Now came the interesting part, filling the tank with something that would make Linda never want to use Jenny's water again. Jenny stared at the empty tank sitting behind her garden shed. She had all the equipment, she had the plan, but now she needed to figure out exactly what to fill it with. Whatever she chose had to be unpleasant enough to make Linda stop stealing her water, but not so dangerous that it could cause serious harm. She spent Saturday afternoon researching safe but disgusting liquids online. Fish fertilizer came up in several gardening forums. It was incredibly smelly but completely organic and harmless to plants. Some people used it diluted for garden feeding, but at full strength, the smell was apparently overwhelming. Jenny drove to 3 different garden centers before she found what she was looking for. The third store had liquid fish emulsion fertilizer in large containers. The employee who helped her load the containers into her car warned her about the smell. "You'll want to use this stuff sparingly," he said, holding his nose. "A little goes a long way. And whatever you do, don't spill it in your car. The smell will never come out." Jenny bought enough concentrate to fill her tank, along with some cheap perfume and vanilla extract to make the mixture even more confusing and unpleasant. She figured if Linda was going to steal her water, she might as well get the full sensory experience. Sunday morning, Jenny began the careful process of setting up her system. First, she installed the valve connectors that would let her switch between city water and her special tank. The hardware store employee had drawn her a simple diagram, and the installation was easier than she expected. Next came the warning signs. Jenny placed them strategically around her water spigot area. Caution: water system under maintenance. Non-potable water, do not use. Property owner only, experimental system in use. She even added a handwritten sign that said, "Plumbing test in progress. Use at your own risk." The signs were bright, yellow and impossible to miss. Jenny took photos of each one from multiple angles, documenting that she had provided clear warnings about her water system. Then came the fun part, filling the tank. Jenny mixed the fish fertilizer concentrate with water, added generous amounts of cheap perfume and vanilla extract, and threw in some food coloring to make the mixture look murky and uninviting. The smell was incredible, like a combination of rotting fish, overpowering flowers, and artificial vanilla. It was nauseating but not dangerous. As she worked, Jenny's neighbor, Mrs. Chen, came over to chat. Mrs. Chen was one of the few neighbors who hadn't been influenced by Linda's gossip campaign. "What are you working on over there?" Mrs. Chen asked, curiously. Jenny had prepared for this question too. "I'm setting up a gray water system for my garden, trying to recycle some household water for irrigation instead of using fresh city water all the time." Mrs. Chen nodded approvingly. "That's very environmentally conscious. My cousin in California has something similar because of their water restrictions." "I'm still testing it out," Jenny said, gesturing to her warning signs. "The mixture I'm using right now is pretty concentrated, so I definitely don't want anyone accidentally using it for anything else." Mrs. Chen wrinkled her nose as a breeze carried the smell in their direction. "Wow, that's quite an odor. I can see why you have all those warning signs up." Perfect. Jenny's story was believable, and she had a witness who could confirm that she had explained the situation and posted clear warnings. Sunday evening, Jenny connected her tank to the valve system and tested everything. When she turned the valve one way, clean city water came out of her hose. When she turned it the other way, her special mixture flowed through. The system worked perfectly. Jenny also took time to write and mail a certified letter to Linda. She wanted official documentation that she had warned Linda about her water system changes. The letter was polite but clear. "Dear Linda, I wanted to inform you that I am conducting some experimental work on my outdoor plumbing system. I have installed warning signs around my property, but I wanted to make sure you were aware that my outdoor water supply may not be suitable for general use during this testing period. Please avoid using my outdoor spigots until further notice." The testing may continue for several weeks while I evaluate different water conservation methods. Thank you for your understanding. Jenny paid for delivery confirmation so she would know exactly when Linda received the letter. Monday morning arrived and Jenny felt like a kid on Christmas morning. She had set her alarm for 6 o'clock, so she would have plenty of time to prepare. She made her coffee extra strong and positioned herself at her bedroom window with a clear view of the front yard. At 6:15, Jenny switched her valve system from city water to the special tank. The mixture looked appropriately disgusting as it flowed through the clear tube connecting the tank to her plumbing. She adjusted the valve to make sure the flow was strong enough to be obvious but not so strong that it would waste her carefully prepared mixture too quickly. Then she waited. 6:25 came and went. Jenny started to worry that maybe Linda had decided to skip her daily water theft for some reason. But at 6:30 on the dot, Linda appeared around the corner of her house, wearing her usual pristine white gardening outfit and carrying her favorite watering can. Jenny held her breath as Linda approached the water spigot. She watched Linda notice the warning signs and saw her pause to read them. For a moment, Jenny thought Linda might actually pay attention to the warnings and walk away. Instead, Linda looked around quickly, rolled her eyes, and ripped down 2 of the warning signs. She crumpled them up and tossed them into Jenny's flower bed like they were trash. Jenny couldn't believe what she was seeing. Linda was literally destroying posted warnings so she could continue stealing water. The audacity was breathtaking. Linda connected her watering can to the hose and turned on the spigot. Jenny watched as the murky, smelly mixture began flowing into Linda's container. From her window, Jenny could see the liquid was obviously discolored, but Linda seemed too focused on her routine to notice immediately. Linda filled her watering can about halfway before the smell hit her. Jenny saw Linda's face change as she caught the first whiff of the fish fertilizer mixture. Linda looked confused and held the watering can closer to her face to investigate. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Linda jerked the can away from her face so quickly that she splashed some of the mixture onto her white shirt. Her expression went from confusion to disgust to horror in about 3 seconds. But the best part was still coming. Linda, apparently, thinking there was just something wrong with the first batch of water, dumped out her watering can and filled it again. Jenny watched in amazement as Linda repeated the process, getting another full dose of the terrible smell and splashing even more of the mixture on her clothes. By the time Linda realized that the water itself was the problem, she had been exposed to the full aromatic experience of Jenny's special mixture. She had it on her clothes, on her hands, and probably in her hair from all the splashing around she had done. Jenny watched as Linda frantically tried to turn off the water spigot, but, in her panic, she turned it the wrong way first, sending even more of the smelly mixture spraying everywhere. Linda was now covered in fish fertilizer concentrate mixed with cheap perfume and vanilla extract. The smell was so strong that Jenny could detect it from inside her house with the windows closed. She could only imagine what it was like for Linda, who was standing right in the middle of it. Linda's perfect white outfit was ruined. Her carefully styled hair was a mess, and she was making gagging sounds that Jenny could hear through the window. Jenny had never seen Linda look anything less than perfectly put together. But right now she looked like she had been wrestling with a garbage truck. The trap had worked better than Jenny had ever imagined. Jenny watched from her window as Linda stood frozen in her driveway, dripping with the most awful-smelling mixture imaginable. For about 10 seconds, Linda just stared down at her ruined white outfit in complete shock. Her perfectly styled hair was now stringy and wet, hanging around her face like seaweed. The smell was so intense that Jenny could see Linda's face turning green even from a distance. Then Linda started gagging. Not just little polite coughs, but full-body retching sounds that echoed across the quiet neighborhood. She dropped her watering can with a loud clang and started frantically wiping at her clothes, which only spread the fishy mixture around more. The vanilla extract and cheap perfume that Jenny had added to the mix made everything worse. Instead of masking the fish smell, they created this bizarre combination that was somehow both sickly sweet and absolutely revolting at the same time. Linda looked like she might actually throw up right there in the driveway. Jenny grabbed her phone and started recording through the window. She wanted documentation of what happened next, just in case Linda tried to cause more trouble later. Linda stumbled toward Jenny's front door, leaving a trail of smelly drips behind her. Even from inside the house, Jenny could hear Linda's footsteps, squelching in her soaked shoes. When Linda started pounding on the door, Jenny calmly walked downstairs and opened it while still recording. The smell hit Jenny immediately, even though she was prepared for it. It was like being slapped in the face with a wet fish wrapped in rotting flowers. Jenny had to breathe through her mouth to keep from gagging herself. "What did you do to me?" Linda screamed, her voice cracking with rage and disgust. "This is assault. This is chemical warfare." Linda looked absolutely terrible. Her white gardening outfit was now a muddy brown color, stained with streaks of the fish fertilizer mixture. Her face was red and blotchy, partly from anger and partly from trying not to vomit. Pieces of her hair were stuck to her forehead, and she had brown smudges on her cheeks where she had tried to wipe away the mixture. "I warned you about my water system," Jenny said calmly, holding up her phone so Linda could see she was being recorded. "I posted signs everywhere, and I sent you a certified letter explaining that my outdoor water wasn't safe to use." "Those signs were nonsense," Linda shrieked. You can't just booby-trap your water." Jenny pulled out her copy of the certified letter and the delivery receipt. "Actually, Linda, this is my property, and you received official written notice about my water system maintenance. You chose to ignore the warnings and trespass on my property to steal my utilities." By now, the commotion had attracted attention from other neighbors. Mrs. Chen appeared on her porch, followed by Mr. Rodriguez from across the street. Soon, about half a dozen people had gathered to see what was happening. They all stayed well back because of the smell, but everyone could see Linda's condition. "She poisoned me," Linda shouted at the gathering crowd. "She set a trap and poisoned me." "I used organic fish fertilizer," Jenny replied loudly enough for everyone to hear. "It's completely safe and legal. Many gardeners use it for their plants. I posted clear warnings that my water system was under maintenance and not suitable for general use." Mrs. Chen stepped forward, covering her nose with her sleeve. "Linda, I saw those warning signs yesterday. They were bright yellow and very obvious. Jenny even told me she was testing a gray water system." Mr. Rodriguez nodded in agreement. "I saw the signs too. And didn't you get a letter about it? My wife mentioned seeing the mail carrier deliver certified mail to your house." Linda's face got even redder. She was trapped, and she knew it. She had witnesses confirming that the warning signs existed, that she had received official notice, and that she had chosen to ignore everything and trespass anyway. "This is harassment," Linda sputtered. "I'm the HOA president. I have a right to ensure community standards are maintained. Being HOA president doesn't give you the right to trespass and steal utilities," Jenny said firmly. "And it definitely doesn't give you the right to destroy posted warning signs, which I have on video." Jenny held up her phone and played back the footage of Linda ripping down the warning signs and throwing them in the flower bed. Several neighbors gasped when they saw Linda blatantly destroying the safety notices. Linda realized she was losing the crowd. Her usual tactics of intimidation and authority weren't working when she was standing there covered in fish fertilizer, and obviously in the wrong. "I want to file a police report," Linda announced desperately. "This is property damage and assault." "That's a great idea," Jenny agreed. "When the police get here, I'll show them all my documentation. The certified letter you received, the photos of my warning signs, the video of you destroying those signs, and the footage of you trespassing on my property to steal water after being specifically warned not to." Jenny pulled out a thick folder she had prepared in advance. "I've also been documenting your water theft for weeks. Photos, timestamps, everything. Plus I have witnesses who saw you bringing other people over to use my water without permission." Linda's confidence started cracking. She looked around at the neighbors, many of whom were nodding in agreement with Jenny's account. These same people had been listening to Linda's complaints about Jenny for weeks, but now they could see who was really causing the problems. "You all saw how she's been treating me," Linda said weakly, trying to rally support. "The fake HOA violations, the harassment, the threats about my community standing. Actually," Mrs. Chen said slowly, I think most of us saw you harassing Jenny. Those violation notices you've been sending out seemed pretty unfair. Her property always looks beautiful. Other neighbors started speaking up. They talked about how Linda had been increasingly demanding and unreasonable as HOA president. Several people mentioned that they had been afraid to speak up because Linda had threatened them with fines and violations too. Linda was losing control of the situation completely. Not only was she humiliated and smelly, but her neighbors were finally speaking out against her behavior. The power she had held over the community was crumbling right in front of her. "Fine," Linda said finally, her voice defeated. I'll go home and clean up, but this isn't over." "Actually, it is over," Jenny said firmly. "You're going to stop using my water, stop entering my property, and stop harassing me with fake violations. If you don't, I'll file formal complaints with the city about your abuse of HOA authority." Linda started to argue, but the smell was getting worse as the mixture dried on her clothes. She was also starting to attract flies, which was adding a whole new level of embarrassment to the situation. "And Linda," Jenny added as her neighbor turned to leave, "next time someone puts up warning signs about their property, you might want to actually read them instead of ripping them down." Linda trudged back toward her house, leaving a trail of fishy drips and an incredible smell that lingered in the air long after she was gone. The neighbors dispersed slowly, many of them stopping to compliment Jenny on her beautiful garden and to apologize for not speaking up about Linda's behavior sooner. Jenny never had to use her special water mixture again. Linda never came near her hose, her property, or even her side of the street. The fake HOA violations stopped immediately, and Linda became much more reasonable in her dealings with other neighbors. Sometimes Jenny reflected as she watered her beautiful garden with clean, fresh water. The best solutions are the ones that leave a lasting impression. Linda had learned a valuable lesson about respecting other people's property, and the whole neighborhood was more peaceful as a result. Fish fertilizer had worked better than any expensive security system ever could have.